Here we are. It is Monday, November 1st in most places in the world. And this is the November session of the Storytelling by and for Adult series. And it's 6 p.m. Plus here in India. And our first storyteller is Kajal Goswami. So Kajal, please introduce yourself and tell us where you're telling from. And please tell us a story.
I am Kajal Goswami and I am from Hyderabad, Telangana, India. Today's story is from George Hart's book, The Shipwrecked Sailor. I hope you all enjoy. This pandemic has kept us all away from our loved ones. And I can understand a lot of you, when you met them, the reunion would have been mixed bag of emotions, happiness, sadness, and everything together. Now imagine a sailor traveling back home after a long voyage. Everyone, I hope, expected them to be dancing and singing and drinking and eating and chatting around and enjoying themselves. Now, when they had left the port of Egypt to travel the world with the expectation that they would bring something precious back to present to the Pharaoh, their return journey wasn't what they had expected. The captain was worried. He feared what lay ahead of him. But there was nothing he could present to the Pharaoh. He was coming almost empty-handed. Now his feelings and emotions had rubbed on these sailors. There was a kind of sadness, a blanket of sadness, sorrow throughout the ship. The sailors were tiptoeing around the captain. They too were worried. It wasn't an atmosphere one would like to stay in. Once in a while, there is always a person in our life or in our group who always tries to do something about things. So there was a lieutenant and he said, this is not going to work. No, let me talk to the captain. Maybe my words would uplift him. He approached the captain, deep in thought, staring at the wide ocean. Lieutenant, what is it you want to tell me? Captain, it's been a long voyage. I never got time to sit with you and tell you my story. How I ended up becoming a lieutenant in your ship. What's your story? Long back, just like all the sailors, I too was a sailor. I was returning back on a ship where our ship faced a storm like none other. That storm wrecked our ship. It broke the ship into pieces. As per my knowledge, I was the only one who survived. I drifted and drifted and drifted for days. The waves took me to an island. The island had everything to offer me except company. Figs, grapes, chickens. I thanked God. God had given me another chance. I decided to enjoy life. I gathered woods and started to light fire. The Fire was burning strong. I was ready to cook. The island started to tremble, shake. What was happening? Maybe earthquake, I thought. Bam! A snake, a huge, humongous, monstrous snake appeared in front of me. I was frozen in fright and in awe at the same time. What a beautiful, monstrous snake with shimmering, glittering scale. Eyes were like gems. What's your business on my island? I was tongue-tied. Better reply or else. His words were like bolts, thunderbolts that stuck me. And I blurted out everything. And I waited for the death to arrive. I could feel him coming nearer and nearer, his breath on my body. I felt him holding me with his mouth. I felt moving upwards. I dare say I never opened my eyes till I felt he had settled me on a rock. When I was free from his grip, I opened my eyes. It looked like his home. This island is my home. Once 75 of us lived on this island. Sadly, it's just me now. I knew he wasn't going to eat me. So I felt courageous. What happened to your family? Long, long ago, balls of fire came from the sky, just sparing me. That was a very sad story. We connected through our family. We connected how we miss them. I spoke about my family in Egypt. Sailor, I have the foresight. I can see in 3 months' time, a boat will come to rescue you. I was overjoyed. 3 months' time, it will fly by. I will visit you after I return to Egypt. I will come back. I promise, my friend. My foresight also tells me that soon after you leave, this island and I shall disappear. I felt sad, happy at the same time. True to his words, 3 months later, a ship arrived. I was rescued. The snake gave me many, many precious gifts. I bade him farewell. Farewell, my friend, for we shall never meet again. On reaching Egypt, I presented those gifts to the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh was so happy that he made me a lieutenant. Captain, see how my life was and how it changed. I can understand. But you know, Lieutenant, you know, I'm just like a goose right now. What's the use of feeding and giving water to a goose in the morning when you're going to have it for lunch? With this, I end my story. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so, you know, for a while I thought that was a true story and that you were actually the sailor, but that's not the case, right?
Yes, thank you.
It's a folk tale?
Yes, it's an Egyptian folk tale collected by George Hart in his book.
Wonderful. So what about the story especially attracted you? What do you love about the story?
The thing that I liked was sometimes we make an attempt to make things better, but we end up making it worse. So sometimes it's better to just stay silent and be with the person and do nothing. Things get resolved on their own. But there are times you say, no, you poke your nose when you're not supposed to, trying to be nice, and it doesn't work. So I felt that story meant that, for me, you try to give hope in a very hopeless situation and it doesn't work.
Anybody, any thoughts about the story? Comments,
Well,
questions?
I loved how your use of your voice and how you took the characters and how you would feel the earth and feel the shaking of the island first before you talked about it. So we could feel like something was going on, and then you told about it. So your sense of place was always strong, and person was always strong. So I was always drawn in, and the ending surprised me. I'm so used to happy endings that when it didn't work, I thought, oh, the end. So thank you so much.
Simran?
Yeah, thank you, Eric. So yes, I completely agree with Eric and David. I was also expecting happy ending, and the way Kajal you said at the end, I was like, oh, and I loved your expressions. And at one point, I really felt that you are only that sailor. Thank you, Kajal. It was a fantastic story.
Moira?
Yeah, and I also loved your storytelling very much. It was so alive, and one just had to look at you and the way you were the snake and everything. I was really very much drawn into the story every moment. But I do have, oops, are you still there? I do have my problems with the frame story, and maybe part of it's because I'm an absolute happy end junkie. But I think something was missing for me in that frame story. Maybe not knowing enough about the captain. So I think maybe this is something that might still grow if you stay with that story. It's for me, it was not, the storytelling was marvelous, and that frame story with the beginning and the end, there was some smoothing or something making it round missing for me, but that's my perception. But thank you.
I understood what you were saying. I needed to speak a little more about the captain. Yes. It's correct. It's correct. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
And I want to jump in and say, Kajal, that I appreciate it, and I think David alluded to this and others, how you shifted back and forth between the snake and the sailor, but it was subtle. And it was just a shift in the voice and also a shift in your proximity to the camera. And it was really neat when you had your finger forward, that kind of directness that the snake had. And so I appreciated that it wasn't large, large character choices, but they were very clear.
Thank you. Thank you.
Geethanjali?
Yes, Kajal, as usual, you rocked. I think I also should stand up and start telling stories. I should have that kind of setup because you can use your whole body while narrating the story. This while sitting, the way you narrated using your whole body, it's something different. Yeah, I think I also need to try that. Thank you, Kajal.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. There's nothing.
Any suggestions, I'm very open because I'm still in the process of learning. Thank you so much.
Well, there's nothing like a sea story, an adventure story about life at sea and being lost in the ocean and finding an island that really transports us into the world of adventure. So thank you for taking us there.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now we will move on to our next storyteller, who is David Meyer. And David and David, are you from New York or you just lived in New York for some time?
I grew up in Ohio, and then I drove a taxi in New York from 1977 through 1985. The
Okay.
golden years, people say. And then I moved all around. Now I'm in Cyprus. Some people know me also as David O'Shea because I was a struggling actor for so long. So both names.
77 to 85, that's known as the golden years of your life or of New York City?
No, of New York City. People look back and go, oh, that was the time when a lot of stuff was happening. And I say, yeah, you had to keep your wallet in your front pocket because if you had it in the back, you get robbed.
Mm-hmm.
When you look on a street, if it was dark, you didn't walk there because you could get robbed. I got robbed 11 times, one time or another, mugged once.
Oh my God.
But never with a gun. I was outsmarted. I was chased by a guy, drunk Puerto Rican with a knife on the 155th Street Bridge. But the people who beat me up were like street kids, white kids in Hell's Kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, when people talk about race, I think everybody's a possible bastard. It's just rich and poor. That's all it is. So you gave me a challenge though. You said, tell stories about New York City from 1977 to 1985 and try not to curse.
Well, it's a family show.
It's a family show. So here's what I'm going to do. I have two stories, and one story, either I can say fudge and you know what that means, or sheet or whatever I can. Or Eric, if you want to help me, at certain points when I would say certain words, I'll point to you, and I just want you to make the sound of a car horn going.
No, I think stick with the fudge or whatever it is.
I'll stick with the fudge. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, no rehearsal. Okay.
But before you begin, I just want to say that there's a reason why the World Storytelling Institute is named World Storytelling Institute. That's the name that I dreamed up, 2007, what is that, 14 years ago? But really, the idea for the Institute came when I was studying with and working for Laura Sims back in the 1980s, during the Golden Age. I'm delighted. There's a delivery at the door. Just a second.
Okay.
Hello? Yeah, I'm coming. 1 minute. My point is that New Yorkers, I'm a New Yorker, shifted to South India. David, you're an honorary New Yorker, shifted to Cyprus in the Mediterranean Ocean. Us New Yorkers, many of us, the only thing we can do is go to the other side of the world. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
David, take it
All right.
away. I'll be
All
right
right.
back. I gotta let somebody in the door here. I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, while Eric's gone, I drove from 1977 to 1985 in New York. And people say, what's that like then? And I said, well, one thing was we kept our money in a cigar box, and we had a lot of change because change was important because there were no cell phones. There were pay phones. So if you needed to call someone, you had to first find a pay phone, and a pay phone that worked, and you had to use your change to go there. And because there's no cell phones, there's no GPS, you used maps. People don't know what a map is now. Then it was like maps. So and one big change is if you ever were on a subway and there's a picture of a woman in a movie poster, someone has always drawn a male member going in her mouth or in her butt. And there was always a picture of like fart coming out of her butt, every place. And that's the change my wife misses. So that was New York then. Here's a story. So that I skate on the edge, but I don't go there. So
That's
here
okay.
two what I do is I tell two true stories. Because as somebody said, old cab driver said to me, Davey, you know this, a taxi is the oldest profession in the world where one stranger trusts his or her life to another stranger to take him from one place to another. So we're like archetypes. That's what we are. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was a mythic job. So here are two stories, one from my first year when I was very green. I'm on East 54th Street between Park and Lexington, and I'm dropping off a fare in front of a 16-story apartment building. I pull over to the side. Now it's downtown Manhattan, so skyscrapers, high rises are all around. Streets are crowded, 500 people walking back and forth on the street, and it's 4 p.m., so it's the beginning of rush hour. And that means traffic's slow moving. It's crawling. It's like, and everyone's annoyed. And I'm blocking one lane of the 3-lane 54th Street, but I don't care. I'm just dropping off. My fare's paying me, and I see on my right a guy in a big white car pulling up, like a Lincoln or some big rich car. I don't know names, but it was big and it was white. He was rich. There's a little pencil thin mustache, cream-colored suit. Pulls up in front of me at an angle, and he stops. My fare gets out, and I try to pull away, but I can't because the guy in the white car has blocked me. So honk, honk. The guy in the white car turns off his engine. What's he doing? I can't stay. I'm blocking 54th Street. That's got a gridlock behind me. What? Honk, honk. Nothing. I roll down my window. I say, hey, buddy, come on. You got to move it. You can't just stop here. Don't you get it? 54th Street. Nothing. So, and he turns around annoyed. He rolls down his window and he points at the door of the high rise like he's waiting for someone to come down. Can't I get that? Everyone's honking now, but he's above it all. He picks up his New York Times and he starts to read it. Just then, from behind me, I hear someone yell, "Son of a buck!" He didn't say buck. I look in my rearview mirror and there's a guy, short guy, rolled up t-shirt, skull cap, muscly, probably in his 40s. He gets out of his car and he walks to the front of the white car, circles around, and he slams his fist into the white car's hood and says, "Hey, bam, hey, bam, what the fudge am I? Chopped liver. Bam, bam, bam. You freaking frick." Then he picks up the front of the white car and he bounces it up and down. "Move it out, move it out, move it out now." Bam, bam, bam. The man in the white car, now he's frightened. He's no longer above it all. He drops his newspaper. He gets the heck out of there. Skullcap walks back to his van. He sees me looking at him. He leans into my window and he says, and that's the way it's done. He goes back to his van, slams his door, and I take off. I'm going into traffic and I'm happy now. I am so honored. I have heard the chopped liver phrase used in context by a professional, and that's the way it's done. Now, a little later, 4 years later, here's another story. I'm on 96 in Lexington. Lexington Avenue's long street, First Avenue, goes uptown, 2nd Avenue, down, cross streets go across Manhattan. I'm traveling down Lexington Avenue, 2 a.m., hunting a fare. It's been a rainy night, so my wheels cut through the rain on the pavement while I look. It's been 40 minutes since I had my last passenger. And if you go 10 minutes as a cab driver, the hunger builds up, the greed builds up, and you got to find someone, got to look, where are they? Where are they? And I just tried all my tricks up First Avenue, 2nd Avenue, cutting side to side, boom, boom, boom. I'm always second in line. Someone else catches the fare. Up, down, dim. I finally get 3 people, 55th and 3rd, tuxedo man, 2 women dresses. I cut there, I get there first. They don't get in. I roll down my window and go, hey, I'm here. Tuxedo man says, we want a bigger taxi. We want a checker cab. I have a little Dodge Aspen cab. I yell at him, checker lover! Take off, go up, and now I'm coming down Lexington Avenue, 40 minutes later in the rain, hunting a fare. I catch up with 5 other empty taxis, also hunting around 70th Street. And now we race from light to light. Green light, zoom, take off, red light, slam, hit the gas, green light, zoom, zoom, out, boom, back, fighting, looking for someone. And at 55th Street, 2 blocks away from me, same street where Eric grew up, further across town, 55th Street, I see a woman, hand up. And I think, honk, honk, boom, boom, wave at her. She waves at me, got her, relax. I pull up next to her and then cutting across, cutting the light, pulls up in front of her a brand new, beautiful checker cab. But she points to me, waves him off. I pull up next to her, say, thanks for waiting. She says, it's okay. She's a pale Black woman, sort of pretty, curled, permed hair, wearing all leather pants. I think, oh, maybe a disco fare, maybe. She gets in the back and she says to me, I'm going to Blimpie's, which is a restaurant, at 47th and 2nd, and then Times Square. I said, okay, get in. She gets in. I said, hold on, make a left on 52nd Street. I cut over towards 2nd Avenue. And as I'm driving her, I look in the mirror. I think, yeah, she's sort of pretty. Yeah, she's nice. And I feel the back of my neck, something in the back of my neck, my hackles start to tingle in a very specific alarm that a lot of cab drivers have. We don't talk about it. And I look in the mirror and I think, no, I don't think so. And the back of my neck, I said, no, I don't think so. She was nice. And I say to her, it's a slow night, huh? She says, slow? You telling me? I thought, back of my neck's right. She's a hooker. I said, but that's okay. So I say, thanks again. A hooker is a prostitute. I said, thanks again for waiting. She says, I get her to the Blimpies. She says, wait, I'll be back. She goes into the Blimpies, and I'm sitting in my taxi, smoking my Marlboros, looking at the meter, clicking off time. And I'm getting annoyed because I want to move. But I think, well, just smoke your cigarette, damn it, David. Look in the Blimpies. And there's my fare. She's at the counter and she's talking to a young man who's working at Blimpie's. He's in his white uniform, sort of handsome, beefy, her age, Puerto Rican looking he looks. And she's talking to him, but she's changed. She's like a little girl. She's leaning at him at the counter and she's sort of smiling, giggling. She leans over the counter and then she leans back and giggles. And he's pouring Coca-Colas for people. He's smiling at him and he's blushing. Very sweet back and forth between the two of them. I watch, smoke. Then after a minute, he leans over, he gives her a little. She goes, she turns around, waves, walks out the door, gets back in my taxi. She says, now Times Square. And she gives me the name of a hotel where I know she's going to be working. I don't say anything. I just drive, wait for the traffic to clear on 2nd Avenue, make a right on 47th Street and head 5 blocks over to Times Square. And I look at her face in the mirror. And I say to her, hey, that guy looks nice. Huh? That Blimpie guy. He looks like a nice guy. She says, oh yeah, he just moved here from San Juan. He nice. He new, real new. And I don't say anything more, but I hear something, look in the mirror, and she's crying. I don't butt in, I drive. But I watch her face as the streetlights flash past. Wet, sad. Around 5th Avenue, 2 minutes later, left in the drive, I say to her, hey, I don't have a Kleenex, but I got a napkin from Sandwich. Here it is. I pass it through, she takes it, and she starts to talk. She says, I met the Blimpie man, Fred for Frederico, something like that. She'd met him about a month and a half ago, and he was sweet to me. He was sweet. She said, he handsome, ain't he? And I said, oh yeah, he's very handsome. Uh-huh. He was nice to me. And she said she'd go there every night and get a sandwich and talk to him, and they would chat and they would laugh. He'd say, he want to marry me. He say, and we pull up in front of this rundown hotel off Times Square, bums out in front, hookers there. She says, he want to marry me. He want me to come home and meet his mama. But he don't know what I do. He don't know what I do. And she leans down and she cries. Then she leans up, she said, I've been hooking since I was 16. And this is the first time I fell in love. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? Man comes up to the cab. You working? I said, get the hell out of here. I'm with a fare, can't you see? She cries, and I say, I realize that sometimes when you don't have anything else to say or do, and you want to help someone, you reach into the realms of the unknown and you look for magic. Now, as a cab driver, I felt I had a special power, that sometimes when everything was right, that I had the power to give people luck. So that's what I told her now. I didn't know what was going to happen in her future, but that I could give her luck. So she bowed her head. I reached through the partition. I put my hand on her head and I said, what's your name? Diane. Luck to Diane. She paid me the fare. She said, thank you. And she walked out and went into the hotel. And I drove back into the night. So that's New York. Thanks for listening.
Mhm. Okay. So Kajal took us to an island in the middle of the ocean. You took us to New York in the 70s and 80s. Well,
2 islands.
uh-huh, uh-huh. So did you say before that driving a taxi in New York was a mythic job?
Yeah, I didn't know it then. But
What
was
what does that mean?
It means it's an archetype. And what it means is that it's a job where a stranger gets in and they can confess to you, and they never, because they'll never see you again. But this is their chance to get whatever's on their mind, whatever dark stuff they've done, they can say to you as a cab driver. And you like the storyteller before talked about listening. You just listen. And sometimes you think maybe you could help. You might delude yourself.
Yeah,
but sometimes,
yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes I think this is my own stupid thought. But if someone said, "Are you crazy?" I'll say, "Yeah, I am." And this is why. I think when all the Greek gods left this part of the world, Eastern Mediterranean, Christ chases them out. And rather than dying, somebody said, "Hey, there's an island. There's an island on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. It's called Manhattan. You can live there." And that if you're right and you're at the right time, right place, you can reach out. And not that those gods, but there is a life to the island. And maybe it's just all the millions of people going around and they're too tired to look too good. There's a life to the island that seems magical, that there's magic, but also that the magic won't save you. But just because it won't save your life doesn't mean it isn't real. The end. But that's what I mean by mythic.
Yeah. So you almost became her therapist or her counselor for a moment there, as she was crying, and you were trying to support her, and then you turned into a faith healer.
Then I turned into a faith healer. Yes.
And you said there was a partition. Even then, there were partitions between the front and the back.
Yeah, there were partitions between the front and the back. Partitions like this plastic shield.
Yes.
That's I'm just for everybody to know. It went behind the driver's head. And it wouldn't stop a bullet, but it gave the illusion it would stop a bullet. So it made robbing you harder. And someone would slide in, you'd close the partition, you'd open the partition like this.
Yeah, I wonder when the partitions came in, because when I was a child, there were no partitions, in the 60s and early 70s. But at a certain time they came in, and I was sad when they came in because it made it harder to have a conversation with the driver.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. And the partitions are still there. I just was there. I got a ride to Kennedy. And not only now they have a partition, but they have a television. So when you get in a cab in New York, first thing you do, turn off the television and talk to the driver.
Yeah.
You'll shock him.
Yes.
So.
And also for those who don't know about Blimpies, it's very similar to Subway.
Yes.
But somehow Subway had genius marketing people, which turned it into a global organization, and the Blimpies people didn't have that. But I always enjoyed Blimpies more than Subway. But Barry, what are you going to say?
I just want to ask David, did you go back by the Blimpies? Do you remember after that? Did you go back by and see what you can see in the window?
No, I never looked for it again.
Yeah.
I never looked for it again. And that's a good question. I wish I did. A few years, try to find the hotel because I thought it was on another street. And then I was walking in Times Square. I think it's on 46th Street. I recognized there it was. It'd been painted. And there was a guy standing, a doorman there on the back. And he saw me looking. He says, "Sounds like there's something on your mind." So I told him the story. And he says, "That's a good story." I said, "What's the name of your hotel?" And he said, "Sanctuary." And I went, "Oh, well, that's a good name." And I walked on. I always thought that was a nice epilogue. So yeah, it's still around.
No,
but I should have looked.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah, it seems that natural to the genre of taxi stories in the 70s and 80s is sometimes a sense of manic fury. and on the verge of violence. And in the first story, there was a character who was banging something up. And of course, one very famous movie that came out of this milieu was Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro, with the immortal line, you talking to me? Or was it talking to me, or you looking at me?
No,
One
no.
of you.
You talking to me?
You talking to me? You talking to me? Who are you talking to? Yeah, yeah. So kind of a semi-demented threat of violence was part of the scene somehow.
Part of the scene. There was a revival of Taxi Driver during the time I was driving, and that was one of the things you do if you got someone who was a sort of, I would say, an a-hole in the back. You could just, because everyone was playing every place. So I look in the mirror, I go, you talking to me? And they go, oh, because they know that they didn't know you and that you could be Robert De Niro if they didn't know, watch out. So it was fun to play with that sort of violence.
So all in all, you look back on this time in your life with a fond feeling, I think.
Yes, because it's the closest I got to magic, the everyday experience of magic. I just was there a few days ago, and it just very quick story. This is sort of a bookend to the first story, is that I had to take a friend who was an old cab driver who's now breaking down. I had to take him to a place, a bank, to show him how to use an ATM card. He's 78 years old, and I only had half an hour to get to this bank. I get him in a cab, we're going across 83rd Street, traffic's dead, nothing's moving. For 2-3 minutes, I see the clock ticking off. I think, what's going on? So I say to our cab driver, I'll get out, I'll fix this. And so I go to the front of the line, and there's a parking garage, and there's a guy in the parking garage who's 30 feet ahead of him in the parking garage, but he doesn't move. He's just sitting there, and the guy behind him is starting to pull in, but he's blocking behind. So I say to the guy who's waiting at the parking garage, he said, why don't you move up? He said, well, the people here told me I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay here. And I said, lying. I said, listen, pal, there's a guy who's dying in the back, like 5 cars back. So you better move the hell up your car, or you don't know what's going to happen to you. And he went, oh, and he moved up his car, and then the other car moved up, and other cars moved up. And I walked back to our cab, and our cab driver, who hadn't said anything right now, said, you're like a lion, and these guys are like hyenas. And I thought, well, what greater praise is there than that? So it still is there, the manic stuff. But my wife said, if you moved back there, you'd be dead in a week. So
you got out at the right time.
I got out while I still could.
Excellent. And you lived to tell the tale.
And to tell the tale to you. So that's good.
Wonderful. All right. I hope everyone has enjoyed this conversation between two New Yorkers. And now we'll proceed to the next storyteller, who is Geethanjali in gentle, serene South India. So Geethanjali, please introduce yourself properly and tell us where you're telling from, and please tell us a story.
Yes, thank you, Eric. First of all, let me pronounce my name correctly. It is Geethanjali Javed. It is Geethanjali. And thank you, Eric, for giving us, the storytellers, this kind of platform. It's been so regular, consistent, and I'm so happy and proud to say that you had been my mentor. You introduced me to storytelling, and I'm so happy and proud. And also to share the story in front of fellow storytellers, in front of our own tribe. That is something different. You can narrate a story to a general public or a school or, special people. But when you're narrating a story to a fellow storytellers, a tribe where you belong, it's like a family. And I'm really very happy to share this story. So without much ado, let me start the story. And yes, I'm going to share a Jewish folktale. The Tsar was on his way to his palace in St. Petersburg. On his way, he saw an old Jewish farmer cultivating his land. The Tsar was taken back by his unique looks, the all gray hair and the all black beard. The Tsar was curious to know the unique looks, so he got down from his carriage and walked to him. The Jewish farmer, he was taken back. The Tsar, walking up to him, the farmer, he was stunned. He said, "Yes, Your Highness, what do you want? Do you have an explanation for this unique look of yours? The all gray hair and the all black beard?" The old Jewish farmer was shocked. It was rather a silly question, but he was a Tsar and he needed to give him an answer. So he thought for a second and then he said, "Your Highness, the hair on my head, it had been growing from the day I was born, whereas the hair, the beard, it started growing from the day of my bar mitzvah." So what is bar mitzvah? Bar mitzvah is a tradition, is a celebration of the coming of age of boys in the Jewish tradition. So from that time, these grow the beards. So you see, Your Highness, the hair is old, whereas the beard is young. What a funny, witty answer, said the Tsar. But promise me, give me a word of honor that you will not reveal this answer to anyone until you have seen my face 100 times. Of course, Your Highness, said the farmer, and the Tsar returned to his palace in Petersburg. Upon reaching his palace, he asked the wise men, the ministers, the counselors to join him for a meeting. And he said, "See, I have this curious question which is lingering in my mind and I need an answer." The wise men collectively, they said, "Speak up your mind, Your Highness. What is it? What is it bothering you? Why is the hair on the head turns gray long before than the hair on the beard does?" The palace fell silent. It was a silly, awkward question, they all thought. But then again, he was the Tsar. And then there was some hustle and bustle in the meeting. And then sensing the situation, the Tsar said, "Okay, I'll give you a month's time. Please take the time and come up with an answer." And the court was dismissed. The wise men, the ministers, the counselors, they all collectively got together and started discussing. They were pondering. The days were numbered, but they were unable to come to a solution, an answer. One counselor, he joined the meeting. He joined the wise men after some time, after some days, after a few days. And he said, I remember the day the Tsar returned to the palace on a particular day. He passed a certain village. So only if you could go to the village, maybe we can find a solution. We can go to the root of the problem. Having said that, that counselor, he immediately rushed to the village. The Tsar passed that particular day. Lucky, he saw the same farmer with his unique looks, the all gray hair and the all black beard, old Jewish fellow, Jewish farmer cultivating the land. The counselor rushed to him and he said, "Excuse me, wait. The farmer was, yes. What do you want? Can you give me the reason behind your unique looks? Now, is he a Tsar? Do you need to answer him?" The farmer said, "See, I'm old, I'm poor. Don't waste my time. I need to cultivate. Move away from my land." The counselor said, I understand. I'll pay you well. I'll pay you 100 silver coins. Ah, that rang a bell in the farmer's mind. 100 silver coins. He hesitantly said, yes, he accepted the 100 silver coins and revealed the answer, the same answer he had revealed to the Tsar. With that answer, he hurried the counselor to the palace. And very happily, he conveyed it to the Tsar. The Tsar, on listening to his answer, was like, yes, I know. Summon the farmer, summon that old Jewish farmer immediately to the palace now, said the Tsar. The old Jewish farmer was immediately summoned to the court. The Tsar was furious, angry. The Tsar said, looking at the farmer, all I asked was to keep up a promise. What have you done? The farmer was cool as a cucumber. He said, indeed, I kept the promise. Really? I told you to reveal the secret after seeing my face 100 times. We have met only once. Now what say? Said the Tsar. The farmer still reiterated his stand. I never broke the promise. And he opened a bag containing 100 silver coins. He took a coin and showed it to the Tsar. Your Highness, what do you see? Your face. I've seen all these 100 coins, 100 times I've seen your face. And after that only I revealed the answer to your counselor, said the old Jewish farmer. The Tsar was like, ha, 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 ha. You witty, intelligent old man, you shouldn't be there. You have to be here in the palace. Immediately, I appoint you as the chief advisor. From that time, the old Jewish farmer, he became the chief advisor to the Tsar. The Tsar never took any decision without the consultation of his chief advisor, the old Jewish farmer. The old Jewish farmer stayed with the Tsar in the palace, and he followed the Tsar wherever he went. And that's the end of my story. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Anybody, any thoughts, comments, questions?
It's a wonderful story. I love the way you changed your status between when you're the Tsar, you would stand up straighter and you could tell just from your posture who was who. And that was just lovely. You didn't have to do anything other than that. And your voice too. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've known that story for a while, and I've always been intrigued by it, especially because it's not true for me at all. My beard is all white, and my hair still has most of its color. And I wonder if this is a truism throughout the world, if the other gentlemen have that experience as well, or if you know, when I first saw that story, I thought, well, that's strange. It's, you know, but it's a neat story, and you told it well, Geethan.
It's an interesting story, yeah.
Moira?
Mine is white, and white on top.
Yeah, I liked your story very much and the lively way you were telling it. And it's, I think I know quite a few Jewish stories, but I didn't know that one. It was really to the end, how is he going to pull himself out of that situation? And it's a lovely ending. And if you don't mind, I'd like to know where one can find that story.
To be honest, I found it online on YouTube, folktales, Jewish folktales, yeah.
On Jewish folktales on YouTube?
Yeah.
And okay, and what's the title was the farmer?
There wasn't any story. In fact, Eric just wanted a title, so just in a haste, I just gave myself a title. There was no title for it. It was just mentioned Jewish folk tales. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. I can spend some time with that. I really loved it. Thank you.
Moira, I know I have a printed out copy of it from a book. So if you shoot me an email, I'm not where I can get to it now, but I will be able to get to it probably later today or tomorrow.
That would be great. Thank you, Barry. Thanks.
We're going to have a whole session of Jewish folktales in the Storytelling Festival in February.
Oh, okay.
That'll be
Nice.
there. And by the way, a bar mitzvah, I'm Jewish myself, but I'm not religious.
Oh.
I'm from a long line of atheist Jews, going back to Russia. My family came from Russia to New York in the early 1900s. So I never even had a bar mitzvah. But an essential aspect of the bar mitzvah, and for the girl it's called bat mitzvah, is that the young person goes before the community and reads from the Jewish Bible, and that establishes that that young person knows how to read, and that is the real gateway to adulthood. The mark that this is now an adult person because the person can read. So even though I didn't do it and I'm a bad Jew, I'm still proud of certain aspects of the tradition.
I would like to share one more thing, Eric. In India, we have a connection with this tradition, with this celebration. The Brahmin community in India, they celebrate this celebration, the coming of age of boys. They have this celebration. You know, they tie this thread, the sacred thread. And this happens among the boys in the age group of 14 or 15. And so, yeah, because usually the Brahmin community is connected with the Aryans and all that. So I really feel a connection between this Jews and this Brahmins.
Hello, Geethanjali, a small correction. It's not like that. It doesn't happen at 14, 15. It happens when the boy is typically around 8 years of age. And that is to mark their entry into the ashram. So it was not, no, the concept is wrong.
Okay, what about the sacred thread?
Yeah, so basically we had that 4 ashrams, right? So when around 8 years or till 8 years of age, the boy could be with the mother and father. But around 8 years of age, boys were sent to their gurus. So that was the time when that ceremony used to be performed, and the boy used to go to ashram to study. Okay. Yes, so it is not a ceremony anyway related to coming of age of boys.
Okay,
so, yeah.
Thank you, Lina. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. So we're really a global community telling each other stories. So many white people are telling Indian stories. I'm glad you're telling Jewish stories. Great. Okay, Simran, are you ready?
Yes, Eric.
Very good. Okay, now you have created the story that you're going to tell, right?
Right.
And do I have the title correct? Anger is like a wind that blows away the lamp of the mind. Is it correct? Wonderful. Okay, so please introduce yourself and tell us where you're telling from, and please tell us a story.
Yes. Namaste, good evening, hello to everyone. So in India, the festivals of light have been. Wishing all of you a very happy Diwali. आप सबको दिवाली की बहुत शुभकामनाएं. So here I forgot my introduction and excitement. So my name is Simran Nagwani. I am from India, Mumbai. Here goes my story. In a small village, there lived a man named Ramji. He was just like his name. Calm, kind-hearted, very polite, and very helpful. His wife's name was Shanti. But Shanti was totally opposite of her name. She was quite short-tempered, very rude, very arrogant. One day, Ramji was sitting under the peepal tree, enjoying the cool breeze, when one of his friends saw him and said, Ramji Bao, oh Ramji Bao, go home, it's quite late. Bhabiji must be waiting for you. That's the problem, that she's waiting for me. Yes, I'm going. Thank you. As soon as he reached home, Shanti was desperately waiting for Ramji to arrive. As soon as Ramji entered, she looked at Ramji and said, where have you been? Why are you so late? Shanti, it's very hot today. So I thought I will sit under the tree. Oh, very hot, huh? Very hot for you. And what about me? What about me? I'm also cooking here, standing all day, cleaning, sweeping, mopping. Don't think of your wife or what? Sorry, don't shout. Don't get angry. What is for dinner? Again asking that silly question. Every day you're asking me that silly question. What is for dinner? What is for dinner? What is for dinner? What will be there for dinner? Sabji, roti, what else? No, don't get angry, Shanti. Listen. I am listening and I'm answering to your question. No. Actually, today, my throat is not that great. So I was thinking if you can make rice. First and foremost, you're late. And now food is ready. Sabji, roti, salad, achar. And now you're telling me to cook rice. This is the reason I get angry on you. And then you tell me that I get angry on me. Then you complain that I'm not listening. Okay, Shanti. Okay, I will eat whatever you have cooked. You don't have choice, nah. Otherwise, you would have started talking again and again. Now, Ramji went inside. He came. He was served the food. As soon as Ramji was about to have his first bite, Shanti started again. Listen, why we have only one bull in our farm? Why not two? Shanti, our farm is very. Everyone in the village are having more than two bulls. That day I was going to the market, I met that Kajal. That Kajal was telling me, hey, Shanti, you have only one bull. I have 3-4 bulls and I have 2 cows also. I was like, okay. And then on my way, I met Geethanjali also. And Geethanjali was getting 2 cows and sheep and she was laughing at me. Look. Why we have only one bull? Shanti, we don't need. Our farm is very. I don't want to listen about our farm. Tomorrow morning, I want bull in our house, our farm. Shanti, try to understand. What try to understand? You understand my point. If we have 2 bulls, I will tell to Kajal and Geethanjali that I also have 2 bulls. I don't care if it is small or whatever it is. I will go and get it tomorrow morning itself. Next day morning, Ramji, he went to the animal market and he got nice bull. Shanti was very happy. I also have 2 bull. She bragged about it in the entire village. We also have 2 bulls. We also have 2 bulls. We also have 2 bulls. Even Ramji was happy because now obviously the farm was small and now his work became easier. He was happy that okay, 2 bulls are there. Few weeks passed. One day when Ramji came back home from the farm, he saw Shanti's brother was sitting in the house. He was surprised. Shanti's brother has never visited them. How come you're here today, Suresh? Jijaji, what to do, Jijaji? I need a favor from you. Yesterday, one of my bulls died. So can I borrow your bull? My work has become easier now. If he takes one bull, why don't you take after 2-3 days or weeks? And Shanti immediately came running from the kitchen and she said, 1 minute, 1 minute. Are you denying my brother that you're not going to give him the bull? Few weeks ago, you were only telling me we don't need. And now my brother wants, so you're denying, huh? How dare you? Brother, you can take the bull. Jijaji, I need it. Okay, you can take it. Jijaji, I was thinking that can sister also come with me? Mother is missing her. Yes, but not more than 2-3 days, huh? I will miss her. I'll miss her presence. Ah, you will miss my presence. Don't lie. You want that someone should look after this house. Someone should cook for you. Someone should keep waiting for you. I will come after 2-3 months. What you will do? Okay, as you wish. After 2-3 months. Whenever I want. How dare you give me advice? And how are you telling me what to do and what not to do? Okay, Shanti, relax and you start your packing. Shanti started packing. Next day, morning, Shanti was full set to leave to her mother's place. Ramji, he opened the door and he looked up and he said, Shanti, the weather is not looking that great. I feel you should go tomorrow. That's my suggestion. Did I ask you how is the weather? Did I ask you? No. I am also expert. I am also smart. We'll go today itself. Brother, get ready. We are about to leave. Okay. I will leave you till the village river. Your wish. Now all three of them, Shanti, Shanti's brother, and Ramji with the bull. They reached. Now to reach to the Shanti's village, they had to cross the village river. Ramji immediately looked at the river and said, Shanti, the water level is little high today. I suggest that you should not go today. You don't even know swimming. You keep quiet, always negative. I also have brains. Let me think. I know everything. Brother, it's nothing. Let's start. Let's cross the river. Nothing will happen. And you, Ramji, keep quiet and stand here. But Shanti, keep quiet. All the time. Blah, blah, blah. And they started crossing the river. Shanti's brother was holding tight to the neck of the bull and he was behind. Shanti was pushing the bull from behind and she was struggling to cross the river and Ramji was looking. Shanti, be careful. I know. And so Ramji saw the water level is rising. Shanti, water level is rising. I know. I can see. Keep quiet. As she crossed, while she was in the middle of the river, suddenly Ramji saw the water level is reached till the neck of Shanti. Shanti, be careful. I know everything. I'm smart enough. And while she was pushing the bull, she lost her balance. And there she was, drowning in the river. And she started screaming, help! Immediately, without wasting any time, Ramji jumped into the river. He swam. He somehow struggled and he got Shanti out of the river. He looked at Shanti and said, I have told you so many times that your anger will make you lose someday. Your senses and today will lose your shoe just because of your anger, just because you're not listening to other people. And today you saw the consequences. He went on and on. And after some time, he realized that Shanti is speechless. Are you okay, my dear wife? Shanti looked at Ramji and said, I'm so sorry. You always tell me today I could have lost my. I'm sorry, Ramji. I'm sorry. I will try to control my anger, and I will listen to you. I will listen to you first, and then I will speak. I'm so sorry. Ramji immediately said to Shanti, "It's okay. You have realized that anger is very bad, not just for others, but for yourself too. Now let's go home. I don't want to go to my mama's place." Remember, Shanti, anger is the best friend of fools. I don't want to be fool anymore. Let's go home. And there Shanti saw her brother on the other side of the river with the bull. She waved goodbye to her brother and she went back home. But this time when she went back home, she was different, Shanti. Thank you for listening to me.
Okay, thank you. Well, that was a wonderful dialogue between two characters. Great acting.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Any suggestions, feedback, I'm open to it.
Well, I love the way you were able to just, with your face, just turn back away. And when you were Shanti, I thought, oh my God, I hate to be him. I hate to be him because I've seen that look before. And all you had to do was say it. It was just wonderful. What was nice also is how you cut him off, how he would start to say something and you would just cut him off. You didn't feel the necessity to finish a line because you knew you didn't have to. You just cut him off, that the back and forth was enough. So thanks you for that. That was wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you.
What did the character really learn along the way?
So Eric, I would just like to mention, I got this story from one of the websites, that's India Channel something, and it's written by, story is written by Vinita Sinha. But I curated the end because in the story, what she has written, the lady dies. The character dies and the husband is watching. And husband is just smiling in the end. But somehow I thought that ultimately Ramji was a good person. Because in the start of the story itself, it was mentioned that he was a very polite, kind-hearted, calm. And I felt that somehow he's watching his wife dying. I felt it's not right. So I changed the end of the story that he gave second chance to his wife, though he was irritated, frustrated. But I felt that my heart said that Shanti should get a second chance because anger is something that's not easy to control. And this story also, I really liked it because listening itself is an art. If two people listen to each other, half of the problems will get solved. So Shanti never listened to her husband, and second was her short temper. So, because if you see, if we adults also, kids also, they are fighting, especially adults when they are fighting, husband, wife. I'll not talk about anyone else. I'll talk about my husband only. So when we fight, so I keep telling my husband, listen to me. He says, listen to me first. So it's like, who is going to listen to whom? So listening plays a very important role. That's why I thought that this story is not even just for kids, but for all the age groups. Because listening is an art. And once you start listening, you can automatically somewhere control your anger too.
Right.
That's what I have to say.
Kajal?
Simran, from the start till the end, I was tied to the story. It was very Indian. Sorry to say this, but it was you went through all the phases, of there was humor, there was you could give a thought behind what was there in the story. I loved your narration. This is the first time I'm seeing you narrate, and I loved it. Amazing. And how you
Thank you.
even included the people who were there in the story. You took my name and you took Geethanjali's name. It's binding the whole community together. Like I am now part of that story. So it's going to be there with me for a long, long time. I loved it. Thank you so much, Simran.
I'm glad you liked it, Kajal.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you, Eric, for giving this wonderful opportunity. Happy to be here. Happy to share this space with all of you.
Thank you. Yeah, we have about 24 people online, but only about 12 of us have our camera on. But the other 12, I'm sure they're listening and watching and enjoying. So, okay, our next storyteller is Mary in Mumbai. Mary, are you ready?
Yes, Eric.
Okay, please introduce yourself properly and tell us the title of your story, and please tell us a story.
Yes. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm Mary, and I'm from Mumbai. And the title of my story is The Gold and Ivory Tablecloth. It's a story which appeared first in the Reader's Digest in 1954. And here I start my story. The final hymn was over. People were beginning to leave the church. And as the parishioners were leaving, there at the doorway stood the pastor, Reverend Howard Shade. And like always, he greeted each and every parishioner as they stepped out from the doorways of the parish into a new Sunday morning. Reverend Howard Shade, a tall, broad-shouldered man with long, blonde, wavy hair and a booming voice, a very friendly man who loved to interact with his people. He was a pastor at the First Reformed Church at Nyack in New York by the Hudson River. This church had been there for many, many years. Rich and poor people alike had been in this church and worshipped here. Many pastors had come and gone, but after so many years, the church had lost some of its former glory, and there was much damage done. But the pastor and his wife worked hard with a lot of hard work, hammer, paint, and faith to build this church back to its old glory. And almost all the work was done when just a week before Christmas, a severe storm hit the Hudson River Valley. And the storm was so severe that it ripped the village apart. And the maximum damage was to the church. The wall behind the altar had just been soaked with the rain and had just fallen apart. And now the pastor and his wife stood there, staring at the gap in the wall. The wife was almost in tears. We're going to fix Christmas a week. The pastor felt sad too. But he reminded himself, "Thy will be done." And he looked at his wife and said, "Something will come up. You don't worry." The next day, they set off into town, and there they attended an auction organized for the benefit of the youth. And while they sat there, things were put out and auctioned. And then the auctioneer, he pulled out a cloth and he opened it up. And it was a beautiful gold and ivory tablecloth, 4.5 meters long, very intricately done. From a time, not from now, from many years ago, one wouldn't have seen such an intricate lace tablecloth in the recent days. But as the pastor saw that, he instantly had an idea. He bid for it and he got it for $6.50. He took the tablecloth, folded it back, and with this idea brimming in his head, he and his wife went back to church. And the pastor got immediately on to work. He took the tablecloth and held it against that hole on the wall behind the altar. And he instantly knew this would look very beautiful. What with Christmas Eve and moonlight, the tablecloth would definitely shine. And so he got to work with his hammer again and with a lot of faith. It was soon lunchtime and 2 days before Christmas Eve. He stepped out of church and there he saw a woman in her middle-aged, waiting there for the bus at the bus stop. He looked at her and called out to her and said, "Come inside. The bus won't be here for another 40 minutes. Come inside and sit. You can keep warm." And he welcomed her inside and went back to work on the tablecloth. The woman went and sat down on one of the pews in the church. She knelt and prayed with her hands folded and her head bowed down. After a moment, she lifted her head up and she saw that the pastor was still working. She got up from her seat and walked towards the altar and kept looking at that cloth. The pastor saw that the lady was looking at the cloth and he felt compelled to tell how the wall had broken. And he started to tell her, the wall had broken and how we got this cloth at the last moment and how he was fixing it. And he went on, but he noticed the woman was not listening. She took the cloth in between her fingers and felt it and said, this is mine. This is my tablecloth. My husband, he brought this for me from Brussels many, many years ago. The pastor was perplexed. She went on to explain, her husband and she, they were Viennese. They lived in Vienna. During the World War, they opposed the Nazis and had to escape out of town. And her husband had put her on a train and let her go ahead of him, promising her that she would join him soon, promising her that she would join her soon. But then she never heard back of him. I think he must have been arrested and killed. I really don't know what happened to him. I really feel bad for all that happened. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have let him left alone behind. And she began to sob. This woman was here today in this town looking for a job as a governess to a wealthy family. But because of her broken English, they were not very happy to have her and she was going back. The pastor was feeling so sad and a bit overwhelmed. He offered her to take the cloth, but she refused and she left. Well, soon it was Christmas Eve and it was time for the midnight mass. And while the cloth was there put up, and there was no doubt that the altar looked resplendent that night. People came in. The mass was a huge success. Each and every person who walked into that church stopped by to tell the pastor how beautiful the service was, how beautiful the altar looked, and what a wonderful idea it was to have that tablecloth there. And so, after the service was over and people had left, and the church was empty, but not quite. There was one man who was still in the church. He was a local watch repairman. He looked at the tablecloth and the pastor walked up to him and said, "Yes." The man looked at it and said, "Many years ago, my wife had a similar cloth. May her soul rest in peace. She took it out only on very special days. The priest couldn't believe him, what he was hearing, but he went on. After the war, I had to send her ahead of me, and I couldn't catch up with her. I was arrested and somehow I escaped. But I really wonder how it would have been. The pastor couldn't believe his ears, and he told the man what had happened just a day ago. The man couldn't believe his ears. He said, could it be true? Could it really be true that she's alive? And so the pastor went and he found out the number of the wealthy person to whose house this lady had come for a job. From there, they got the address and the contacts of where this lady lived. And the next day, on Christmas morning, the pastor and this man, together in the pastor's car, set off to meet this lady. This couple, who had been separated from each other many, many Christmases ago, was soon to be united on another Christmas day. And that's my story for today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.
Beautifully told.
Thank you.
Anybody? Thoughts, comments, questions?
It's such a lovely story. You could see the ending start to come up as soon as the man was there. You thought, I hope, I hope, I hope. And then there was this whole, you told it so well, that there's a whole blossoming at the end of happiness. So it's nice to hear such a happy story. So thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Your expression on your face also lit up, especially toward the end there, where you were so excited that this was happening. It really made the story that much better.
Yes, I read this story many years ago, but I still have that Reader's Digest collector's edition, in which there's this collection of stories from different old Reader's Digest, and somehow this story really stood out for me. So there is a lot of contemplation whether the story is really true, but this pastor was really there in those years in that church. But by the time they could go back to confirm, he was not there anymore. But the story, I thought it was really special. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I was on mute. Thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now we have two more storytellers, both of whom are very well known, I dare say famous, and very accomplished. And it's a great honor that you both are here. Michael Williams is in Ottawa, Canada, I believe. Hamilton.
In Hamilton, Canada.
Uh-huh. And,
not too far from Toronto.
Okay, and Carol Birch is in Connecticut. So first, about Michael, I'm just going to read a little bit from your websites. In 1998, that was 23 years ago, Michael Williams discovered the Scottish Storytelling Centre in Edinburgh, which is a wonderful storytelling organization. And that's when, Michael, you really began studying storytelling. And then 7 years later, you decided to combine your previous roles as a mental health counselor, teacher, and musician into being a full-time storyteller. And so for the past 16 years, Michael has worked with young people, adults, community, and corporate groups across the UK, Europe, Middle East, and Canada. Michael has a particular interest in therapeutic storytelling for health and well-being, and also for exploring storytelling relating to leadership, community building, and end-of-life planning, including legacy creation. So as well as being a storyteller and educator, Michael is a licensed end-of-life planning facilitator. Just if you could tell us a little bit about how that end-of-life planning work relates to you as a storytelling person.
Yeah, and first off, thank you, Eric, for that lovely introduction. I suppose first off, I should say that an end-of-life planner doesn't help people plan how to end their lives, although I've had people, call me for that. But I do help people think about the end of their life and about preparing for the end of their life. So it includes, talking about death and encouraging people to talk openly with their loved ones, but also to make plans, things like wills, powers of attorney, documenting their wishes for how they would like to be cared for at the end of their life, and so on. And the legacy aspect of it, which as a storyteller I'm interested in, are people's life stories. And for me, one story is in many ways the final gift that you can leave your loved ones. And so I've spent a lot of time with older folk, capturing their their stories on video or audio, and sitting with them for 2 or 3 hours, talking, asking questions, and capturing again a sense of their life story and getting them to narrate their life story, and then leaving that document or recording with their loved ones after they've passed away. So yeah. And I guess as a kid, I was one of those strange kids from a young age. I was always fascinated with old people. My grandparents, just fascinated me. They were always telling stories. I didn't always understand them, but whenever they told stories, all the adults laughed, and I was attracted to that because my parents weren't the most humorous people in the world. So I thought, well, these old people can make my parents laugh. There must be something to storytelling. So I suppose that's why I got into storytelling, and eventually, as I've gotten older, found myself in the company of older people and feel quite comfortable there, just like I did when I was a child. So may I go ahead and tell a story?
Go ahead.
Okay. This is a story that I learned many years ago, and I credit the American storyteller, Doug Lippman, who who was my mentor for a number of years. And I'm sure there is a written version of this story somewhere, but like many stories, I hear a story from a storyteller, and then I go on to tell it the way I remembered it. And so this is one of those stories. A long time ago, there was a father who had fallen on hard times. His wife had died several years earlier, giving birth to their son, and now this man was left to raise their son. He wasn't a rich man by any means. No, he was a poor man. And this man, if you had met him, he was always cursing his plight in the world. It's like, oh, woe is me. The world has been so hard on me. Why do I deserve this? And his anger, he'd often take his anger out on his son, striking him in anger and cursing him. And in fact, one day he cursed his son and say, "Whoa, the day that you were born, I was cursed. How can I raise you? I can barely afford enough for myself." But the son, as he grew older, continued to help his father. And one day, son and father were out stacking firewood. And when they had finished, they saw there was an older woman that lived next door to them. And there she was, picking up sticks of wood, trying to pile up her own wood. And the father said, to his son, "Don't just stand there. Go and help her." And so the boy went over and helped the old woman, picked up the sticks and piled up the wood for her. And when they had finished, the old woman came to the boy, and she laid her hand on his cheek. "Oh," she said, "your face is the reflection of the Son of God. Bless you, son." And the boy stood back. He was confused. He said to the old woman, "What was that?" And the old woman said, "Why, that was a blessing. Have you never been blessed before?" No. The boy went home, and that evening at the dinner table, the boy said to his father, "Father, why don't you bless me?" "Bless you," he said. "Why should I bless you? Look at our life. We're poor. Look at what the world has done to me. Why would I bless you? Ah, off with you." Well, as the boy grew older, he made a decision that when he left home and when he married and when he had children, he would do everything so differently. He would not be like his father. He would raise his children with kindness and he would bless them. And so the time came when the boy came of age. He left home. He moved far away from his father, far away to another city. And he did marry. And he and his wife had 2 lovely boys. And true to his word, he raised those boys with kindness and with love. And he blessed them every day and told them how much he loved them. And the years passed. One winter, on a cold winter night, the family were making dinner, and there was a knock on the door. And the 2 young boys went to the door and opened it, and there was a thin old man with a long white beard and scraggly hair and a tattered coat. He was a beggar man. And he said to the boys, he said, "Boys, could you spare just a scrap of food for an old man?" Now the boys, having been brought up to be hospitable, invited the old man to come in out of the cold. Come in and stand by the fire," they said. "We'll get our parents." And they went and fetched their parents, and the parents came out. And the father, that young father, he recognized the old man as none other than his own father. But he kept that knowledge a secret. He didn't tell anyone. Now the old man, his sight was failing, so he did not recognize his son. But the family welcomed him in and said, "You must stay and have dinner with us. Share our food. You're welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself." "Oh," he said, "oh, I have had a hard life. A hard life. The world has not been fair to me. I curse so..." And the young father stopped him. He said, "Grandfather," for they call the elderly people grandfather, grandmother. He said, "Grandfather, please, we do not allow cursing in this house." Well, and it was difficult for the old man, but he agreed. And he sat down and enjoyed a lovely meal. And at the end of the meal, the young father said to the old man, he said, "You are welcome to stay with us for as long as you want, certainly through the winter. And if you want to go in the spring, you may. But you're welcome on the condition that you do not curse in this house. We do not curse here, we bless." Well, the old man wasn't used to that, but he agreed. And so the old man lived with them through the winter, and it was difficult for him to change his ways, but in time he did. He cursed less, and he blessed more. And he became something of a blessing to the family, for he loved to tell stories to the 2 young children. And he would mind them when the parents were working. He was good company. Well, meanwhile, the young father was troubled. He was troubled with memories of his own childhood, of growing up with the old man and being cursed all through his childhood. And these troubles, they disturbed his sleep. He had bad dreams, nightmares. And one night, he woke up from one of these nightmares, and he got up from bed and he went outside, and there was a winter storm raging outside. And the raging of the storm in many ways reflected what was going on in his heart. And he cursed out there. He goes, why? Why did my father, why did he have to come back? Why did he have to be like that to me? Why did I have to have such a childhood? And he was ranting and raving, and he kicked the earth, and he dislodged a stone. And he reached down and he picked up this stone in his hand, and he was crushing it in his hand, and he was about to throw it away when a voice said, "Do not throw away the heart of your father." And the man held on to that stone. And he took a deep breath, and he returned to the house. And he took the stone and he put the stone on the mantel of the fireplace. Well, the winter went on, and it was clear as spring was approaching that the old man was ill, was nearing the end of his life. And the family obviously knew that they would care for the old man until the end came. And the old man had to take to his bed. His sight was almost gone, virtually gone. He was dying. He knew it. And one evening, the young father sat on the edge of the bed and said to the old man, he said, "Sir, is there anything I can do for you? Do you have a last wish? Anything I can do to make you more comfortable before you die?" And the old man said, "Yes." He said, "Yes, you see, I was a terrible father when I was young. Not like you at all. I mistreated my son, and he left me, and I've not seen him in all these years. If I had one last wish, I would ask you that after I die, if you would find him for me and ask if he could forgive me." And that's when the young father's heart broke. And he reached down and took the old man's hand. He said, "Father, it's me. I am your son." And although the old man could not see so clearly, he reached up and he put his hand gently on the man's face, and he said, "Ah, yes, yes, son, your face is the reflection of the face of God. I love you." And with that, he died. And the young man sat there with his father for a while. And after a while he got up, and he saw the stone that he had left on the mantel some months earlier. And he went over and he picked up that stone and held it tightly in his hand. And when he felt it crack in his hand, and when he opened his palm, he turned over the two pieces of the stone and saw that this gray stone was filled with beautiful crystal, out of which radiated a beautiful light that filled the room. The Father's blessing.
Excellent, very nice. Heart touching, beautiful story.
I think like most stories, I'm sure, like any work of art, I think someone once asked Rembrandt, although I might have got the story wrong, it might have been Da Vinci, it doesn't matter. Someone asked Rembrandt, I think he was the one who carved the statue of David, and someone asked him, "Rembrandt, how much of you is in that statue?" He said, "Why, all of me. All of me." And I always believe, of course, that there's always a part of us, a part of the artist in every work of art, whether it's a statue or whether it's a story. And I think stories find us when we need them. And the first time I told that story to an audience many years ago, I couldn't finish the story. It was the first time I told it, and before I got to the end, my heart broke. and I began to weep, and I just could not finish the story. Fortunately, the audience were very compassionate. But what I learned was how important it is to do your work, to do your deep work with a story before you release it to the world. Because the story came to me first for me to do my work. It obviously wasn't meant to be performed initially. My own father had died recently, and I had had a very difficult relationship with my father growing up. He was not in many ways unlike the man in the story. And that was why the story had come to me, for me to do that work, for me to express the grief I'd not been able to express in the 4 or 5 years after my father died. And so that story was a gift. Now I've since done it, and I felt no need to break up or break into tears, approaching the end of that story. But it's always been a lesson to me when I've worked with other storytellers to say, do the deep work first with the story, with your relationship with the characters in the story, to understand why that story came to you or why you think you chose that story, although I think stories choose us. And it was important, and in fact, that first audience, there was a woman in the audience who I noticed when I got towards the end of the story, she completely wrapped herself up in a blanket as if to protect herself. And later when we talked, she said, the emotion was too powerful for me in that story. I had to protect myself from what was about to kind of come out in you. And I realized then that that was not what I wanted. I did not want my audience to feel that they had to protect themselves or defend themselves against the emotion of a story. It wasn't the emotion in the story, it was my emotion. She was so concerned about what was going to happen to me, whether I was going to make it to the end of the story or not. And that's when I realized that, again, that's not what I wanted. This was not a therapy session. This was not, I was not there for the audience to be concerned about me. I appreciated their compassion and their kindness, I did. But as a performer, I wanted the story to do its work on my audience, to allow my audience the freedom to feel what they wanted to feel, and not be concerned about me or my emotional state. So that story, taught me. It helped me through my grief. It taught me something about storytelling, and taught me about doing the deep work in terms of your relationship with the story as a work of art, as a performance piece, and it taught me very much about the needs of the audience and how to care for an audience. So yeah, thank you for letting me share that story again.
Well, thank you, and thank you for teaching us about doing deep work with a story.
Well, I mean, having been, my first career was in counseling, so that's my bias. That's something that always fascinates me. It's not to say that everybody, has to do that. Some people, some people are not so interested in doing deep work. But that's my preference, and that was the way I work with storytellers, is more kind of, I suppose, like psychotherapeutically is how I work with storytellers when I do workshops. Takes longer, but I think the results are more authentic.
Well, and that's not to negate the technical aspects
exactly.
of the mechanics of performance.
Exactly.
The two go together, of course.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Eric, and thank you, everyone.
All right, and now for our final storyteller and scholar of the evening, I want to thank Carol Birch, not only for being here, but for co-editing this book 20, how many years ago? 22, 23 years ago? Who Says? Came out, I think, 98, 99? Was it? Oh, you're on mute, Carol. We got to get you off mute. You got to turn on your mic.
Okay, there we
go. Yeah.
No, you have it. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, but what it is a anthology. It's a collection of essays about the process of storytelling, the emotional, the intellectual, the interpersonal, and also storytelling in different cultures. So you see, long ago, in the field of folklore, we recorded stories and we classified them and we analyzed them. Then came the revolution of the 60s, which was led by my professor, Roger Abrams, and others. And that was called the performance-centered approach to folklore. And they said, hey, come on, let's pay attention, okay, to the tone of voice and to the emotional dynamics going on between people and the context of the storytelling event, both in the moment and of course the whole social surrounding of the event. Who is telling to who can be there, who cannot be there, what time of day, what time of year, you know, the whole the human aspect of the process. And to me, Who Says was a follow-up on that, bringing in materials from many different cultures. And so to the degree that storytelling has developed as an academic discipline or as an interdisciplinary field in the last 20 odd years, a lot of it has been helped, facilitated, stimulated by this book. I've used chapters of it many times in courses I've taught about storytelling, as have people all around the world. So thank you for that, Carol. And tell us what you've been doing recently.
Well, it's been first of all, thank you for that. My friend Melissa Heckler and I, who we edited. Oh, I have to remember to stop looking at you and look up here at everyone. We wanted so much to move beyond. Well, I like him. I like his story. You know, to try and develop some sort of aesthetic language, and the aesthetics of storytelling, as Michael was just talking about, are affected by where you're telling, who is the audience. I mean, you know, I always say there's this continuum from the most informal story settings, our kitchen tables, to the theater piece. But all along there are important changes in the relationship and the literal physical distance between teller and listener, and the relationship between teller and text, how close they are or far they are from the actual text they're speaking. So I love that kind of stuff. It's like biting into a peach and having the juice run down your arm. It's like just to try and clarify, why does that work here? It doesn't work there. Why does it work there, but it doesn't work here? You know, that there's. And so anyway, you just gave me a little space to go off, and I'll come back. But I love that. And I want to thank you for your kind remarks. And I want to thank everyone who told a story. I'm not a morning person at all. And so I appreciate that I was able to come later in the morning after sort of inhaling several cups of coffee, and I really appreciated the stories and the honesty with which the stories are told. You know, so often we think we know where a story begins, and yet we rarely do, because there are 1,000 steps that lead to every joy and certainly to each sorrow. This is an ancient story set in Crete. A boy and his father are trapped within a maze the father created for the king, and a maze in which they have now been banished. It's not the beginning of their story. It's merely where we come in. The boy, Icarus, chews his lip nervously wondering, did my old man's best thinking get us here locked within walls he devised, a maze? Ah, it's more like a hell of dead ends. Dead ends. This is not going to be my dead end. Maybe his, it's in his name. Daedalus. And then he called out, Papa, Papa, I am young and I will be free. The Papa said, hush, let me think. Boy says, old man thinks, I search. There's got to be a way to be free from dripping water. We suck off walls, away from cold and damp and stone. You mark my words, old man. One day I'll revel in the sun, and I will dive into the sea and ride its rhythmic waves. And those unimaginable, unforeseen joys and sorrows they just keep bending towards unforeseen and unimaginable tomorrows, until finally one day the Father says, I know how we'll go. Birds fly, and so will we. Find birds, find feathers, find bees and their wax. Oh, Daedalus is smart and wise. He fashions wings for both of them. It takes time, but then one day they fly. They fly over a maze that, seen from above, is a hell of dead ends. They fly over towers and walls and soldier ants parading below. They yawn their cries and arrows and spears. They fly into silence. The silence of air and thrumming wings. The joy of updraft and soaring and space. The Papa calls out, son. Son, you are my son. Beware, there's danger in that searing orb. Don't fly too close. Oh, beware the water weight of it could. But the boy laughs, swoops down, spins round, calls out, catch me if you can, old man. And Papa frowns. Boy roars, more celebration sounds, and up he goes, thinking, old man, always playing safe, so sad to barely fly above the water when he could soar. So sun flies to sun to enjoy the warmth and sweeping views. Until no, sun falls from sun, flapping arms propel no air, no updraft, no form spinning. His scream rents the air from sun to sea, and it swallows his final cry, which is Papa. And the sea swallowed the sun. To this day, the Icarian Sea ebbs and flows in rhythmic waves. It swallowed a sun, but not the pride that drowns both you and me. We never know where a story really begins, and some stories never seem to end. For the cost of pride goes on and on like those rhythmic waves. On any given day, we may find ourselves swept away with a drenching sorrow. And then there are those days when we are graced with an unimaginable joy. That's a story of Icarus revisited. I was inspired by the poet Kate Hudson, who told this story as a young woman in her rap poetry. And I was so moved that for the first time in my life, I heard her do that. And I came home and I wrote my story, my version. And at first I had too much of her rap vernacular in it. You know, at 75, it's not my language. And over the year, great thing about the pandemic is it has finally given me the space and time to actually write stories. And I don't think that I could have written a story about my father if I hadn't first written this story. So thank you so much, Eric, and thank you everyone for being here. I loved Michael's story and my story coming side by side with the fathers who touch our lives so deeply. So thank you.
So that sea is actually named after Icarus now?
Yes. Yeah, the Icarian Sea. His father did actually live, you know, I mean, where does myth and legend inflate and deflate and change characters? But yeah, it's the Icarian Sea where Icarus perished.
Carol, thank you very much. I really enjoyed that story. I just it was just so poetic, and poetry has that ability to really reach inside us. And it reminds me too that even though I know the myth, and many people know the myth of Daedalus and Icarus, it reminds me of how important it is to hear these myths over and over again. You know, different tellings, different versions. It's like food. You know, we need food every day. You know, you don't have one meal and say, well, that's that. You know, I don't need any food again. And so it's like going to someone's house and someone's prepared you a meal that you've had before, but because they've prepared it in their way, you know, it's even more delicious than if I had made it. You know what I mean? So I want to just thank you for bringing that myth. I think it's just so fitting to have that old myth served up again for us. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's what she certainly did for me. It was like, wow, these stories that always, you know, the names in Greek myths have always just been such a stumbling block.
Carol,
yeah, I think it was. Go ahead.
Oh.
No, go ahead.
Can I go ahead?
Go.
I wanted to tell you about your voice and your cadence and the rhythm of how you tell that story. You know, it wasn't rap and it wasn't poetry slam or it wasn't any of that, but it just, you know, it took me up and it took me down, and it just the way you used your voice was absolutely hypnotic.
You ebbed and flowed in rhythmic ways, just
Exactly,
like the
you ebbed
Icarian
and flowed.
sea.
Well,
The
That's
sea,
exactly
yes.
right. Exactly right.
Well, the
You
sea was ebbing
moved
and flowing.
up and you
Yes.
just fantastic. Just
So
the rhythm of it.
were you improvising some of the words, or was it mostly memorized?
No, I made a mistake. I would say. I said, you know, he flew above their cried alarms and spears. And I said arrows. And it's like, I don't know if there were arrows in ancient. It was like the perfect example of like wanting to stop and say, wait, no, you know, and how you just, you know, I always jokingly say you sin boldly, you know, well, I made the mistake. I'm just going to keep going. And at the end, I decided to, for the first time, I always end And so each day sort of is graced with unexpected joys and sometimes drenching sorrows. And I thought, no, put the sorrow first and put the joys last, instead of ending with that, and instead of the last words being drenching sorrows. So and because of where we are, then I just went right into telling you about where I got the story and why I got the story and what it meant, to me.
Well, I'm in the middle of conducting a multi-week workshop with storytelling trainees, and the next session is going to have some ebbing and flowing in their speech. I'm going to encourage them to make it up as they go along.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't want it to lull,
Uh-huh.
people. Like, I don't want to lose meaning in the
Yeah.
rhythm.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you can break the rhythm at any time.
Yes, right.
Thank you for starting out and pointing out that we're always in the middle of it. That we start and we're in the middle of it. We join them in the middle and they're in the maze. Because often so many things is like, here's the beginning, here's the end. But no, we're always in the middle. And when you pointed that out already, I was a guest in a world that had gone on before me, and I'm here and I'll be a guest and it's going to continue after I leave. So thanks so much for doing that.
Oh, well, I need, I'm a librarian, and so I have to give credit for that. There is a woman who won one of those MacArthur Genius Grants named Karen Hess, and she wrote a book called Out of the Dust. And in it, she doesn't talk about joys, but she talks about sorrows. And so I've always, ever since I've read that book, that concept that there are 1,000 steps that lead to every sorrow. That was her point. But no, and then I thought, well, no, they lead to every joy too. That, if this hadn't happened, that wouldn't have happened. And our lives are just always unfolding. And how glorious that is. Instead of, some people fear the unfolding. There are times I have feared the unfolding, but no, it's just, it goes on. So thank you for your story, cab drivers in New York. Oh my goodness.
You're welcome.
The millions of stories.
Millions of stories. Thank you.
This is so wonderful. What a wonderful way to start my Monday morning.
This pandemic has had many bad consequences, but one of the great ones is sessions like this.
That's right. I love telling people all weekend. Well, I'm going to be telling stories in India on Monday.
So I'd just like to say,
go ahead.
If I may, I just really appreciated you taking the story from just a myth down to a real personal, real emotional level. And the Icarus saying "Papa" at the end, it just gripped my heart. It was really very well done. Good job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, hope you learned something in 51 years of storytelling. But there I was with my arrows. It's like, what the hell is that, Carol?
Yeah, I thought that was actually pretty cool to have the arrows in the spear. That's like, I'd never heard that before, but that,
right.
it was pretty neat.
I live in the Eastern Mediterranean and there are arrows. So you were right. There are arrows.
Oh, there are arrows?
And there were arrows, at least at the Battle of Marathon there were. So
good. Well, that's good to know. So this entire lesson was actually an error anyway. Okay.
Yes.
I guess what I was trying to say is, sometimes even when you know a story, like a word comes out and it's like, where did that come from?
Sure.
I mean, not because I tell it the same all the time, but like it was a red flag word to my ear.
Sure.
There were not as bad as I thought.
That's okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much to everyone. And this will go up on YouTube. You'll get an announcement about it. And Here, let me turn off the recording so we can say goodbye properly.